Ono kamufitinze mu ngeri ye nono.
Yes, it's
yeah.
Hariyo nenekiresi yoka.
Uli.
Nengo upapula mwabu kolada. Bubinze. Nayo kuchisi okuteka awamu na kubinze.
The Egyptian queen. Yeah. Turn around.
Hello, my friends.
Actually, you're giving me ideas.
It is the goal.
Yeah.
As many as possible.
It is like this. Yes. Zito.
Sorry. Models we are here.
Sorry. Somehow we're the same tribe. Shegera. Nahati turi kugamba, on our own, and when we get together, it's really exciting.
I still really feel like
it will be, because he's taking some shots in the conversations, they could be.
You could edit them.
Voices, but without people, but work showing.
So what's also, that's a good thing for him to ask. Should he film this whole thing? Like he should
taking that time. This year is going to be busy.
This year,
Yeah, and it is
for all of us.
Busy because of this.
Yes. Okay.
What are we doing? We are writing a course on East African modernism.
Okay.
You see, each time they talk about East art in Africa, your mind quickly goes to Ghana, Senegal.
Okay, yeah.
East Africa. South Africa. Why? And it's partly because we here did not inherit a rich legacy of figurative art, masquerades, and things like that.
You have to speak very loud.
Yes.
Because they're using that mic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
So we didn't inherit that, and the early writers, anthropologists who wrote about African art in the beginning of the 19th century, 20th century, we are obviously fascinated by those objects. Of course, as ethnographical material, but they are art anyway. And none of that, or very little of that exists in East Africa. So when art schools emerged at the beginning of 19-something, in Uganda in particular, 1940, we talk about 1940.
Yes.
Many scholars in African art doubted that how can a tradition that lacked what we would call African art inspire a modern African art. You don't have bronze casts, you don't have masquerades, you don't have, all you have are mats and baskets and trinkets, really, pots and so on. That such are not important, significant history to inspire a strong East African modernism. Of course, those are stereotypes. They are wrong.
They're wrong, of course.
Because whether it's the baskets or that's our heritage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not inferior to what they consider to be.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So, so indeed, we have a dynamic community of artists, especially after 1940, who have gone ahead to produce fantastic artworks. Even before 1940, we are also talking about the pre-colonial.
Yes.
This was not a desert as
No.
far as art production was concerned.
Exactly. Yeah.
What the travel did was to stimulate creativity, which creativity they themselves had in fact poured water on. You know, in other words, when missionaries came, when the colonial masters came, they sort of ignored
the art.
artifacts. Or they considered them to be satanic, as you know. So they did not support them or encourage them. So the creativity could have sort of dampened a little bit. It was travel who sort of ignited the fire.
Yes.
And stimulated more creativity along modern lines within the scope of art schools. Now, that is the background to which we are writing this
I see.
And I want to ask you your own story within that sort of history and how you fit in, how you don't fit in.
Yes.
Sometimes. And in the end, what we are looking at, this emerges of East African modernism. It starts with African modernism, of course, where modernism, what we are implying is the act, the contact between Western Africa, which resulted in paintings, sculptures, and so on, that you take to the gallery, and they become objects of commodities really, contributing to culture, obviously. That's a story for another day. But at least there is a very strong movement which cannot ignore the intervention of people like Margaret Traore, which also cannot ignore the fact that there existed a strong visual tradition, and what Traore did was to sort of create if you like, something that welds together. And once welded together, you have a hybrid, and this hybrid has been very variegated. It is wide-ranging. Using paper, using color, oil color, sometimes using wood, and so on. So your own story is what
you are interested in. Yes, I must say that Margaret Traore was honest. I feel that she was honest enough to ignore the colonial sort of program to really bring up the idea of art as it is in Makerere. I didn't go to Makerere, but I've always admired people from Makerere for what they did right from when Normal Gallery started. My story of involvement with art, apart from my childhood, which probably is the engine behind my creativity somehow, the memory, remembering what I saw as a child in my village where I was born, in south of Uganda, Kisoro, Rwanda. That area was all one area. It was called Rwanda until the demarcations and so forth. Now, I witnessed at the age of 5, 6 metalsmiths, people who making our implements, people making hoes and so forth from from rocks. There are rocks there in the volcanic mountains, which they use to make these iron. Now I saw musicians making their own instruments and playing them, and I saw potters. My neighbors were potters. Our neighbors were potters, Batwa potters, and these Batwa potters were amazing. The firing was like building a sort of a house, and they would pile all these pots and fire them. And as kids, we would make little snakes and little cows and put them in there and wait for them to come out. So that was a very exciting time for me. Now, in secondary school, when I finished my primary school in Namtamba, which is about 2 hours from here, I came to Old Kampala. It was an Indian school. It was called Old Kampala Government Indian Secondary School before independence.
Okay.
And I went there after independence. And I was with my friend. We were the only 2 Africans in the class.
Okay.
You couldn't believe the kind of world we were in Kampala at that time. So they were teaching art. My first time to see a brush and oil and acrylic or sort of watercolor. And it was, they were teaching sort of the traditional methods of teaching realism, composition, nature, and so forth. They could paint them. They could. They had access to magazines. They had access to newspapers. I didn't have.
This you're talking about the 60s.
I'm talking about the 60s.
Yes.
My access was to welders in Katwe, basket makers in Shauriako, shells. I was exposed to totally different art form. I was exposed to ceremonies in the village, where we used to have.
You frequently go back to the village.
Of course, yeah. So I didn't like art class at all.
Okay.
Although I think I passed my O-level, but I didn't like that art class. I went with a friend to Sese Islands, Bukasa Island, and I found a stone. It was not soapstone, limestone. I brought it back to Kampala. I carved it, and so I was fascinated by this stone because you could actually carve things out of it. Then one of my uncles had magazines. They worked in Kampala, had ebony magazines, drum magazines. Those were the early magazines sold in Kampala. And they were old, there were many, and he didn't want to throw them away. So he says, what can I do with these things?
Wait a minute, those drum magazines, Flamingo and so on.
Flamingos, yes.
They were trying to recreate a certain kind of Africa, or redefine Africa, reclaim our past, and assert ourselves as validating
our the time of independence was a time when all nations in East Africa were trying to find an identity. And the Kenyatta had this the Kenyatta whisk, the fly whisk, and the hat, and he was a traditionalist. Nyerere had the Nyerere suit and Kaunda suit and so on. Here in Uganda, we failed to find it, but we had our kanzu, which was a sort of an Arab thing that Kabaka had adopted and Buganda had adopted, and the British reinforced with their jackets. And so the whole thing, and the busuti, which was
actually,
it was
let me just cut you short a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I think the kanzu and the busuti would have coat on,
Very much, yeah.
But because Buganda has already been resented from the time of colonial, intervention by other communities in Uganda.
Yes, yes.
There was a fight against the continued, if you like, domination of the Buganda within.
Yeah, I see. Yes.
Independent Uganda.
Yes,
so, Kazu could not have become.
Well, dress and for the. I think also we did not define our history well enough to understand that the Kabakas were dealing with the bigger issues in protecting this region from the domination of the Ottoman Empire coming from the north and stopping foreigners coming from the east, allowing them to come by the lake. I mean, that kind of international politics that was playing here, ordinary people, we didn't understand it. But the Kabaka and his people did understand that. And the British didn't want to encourage studying such politics because they were the players in some of these things. So what happened in the 60s after independence, that I realized that I was part of, is the Ministry of Culture and Community Development that was formed after independence. And the minister at that time was Adoko Nekyon. So Adoko Nekyon, I was in secondary school, he created social centers in all districts. And these social centers were collective centers where crafts and crafts makers would come to show their crafts in sort of Grand Hotel. At the moment it's called Imperial Hotel, the Grand Hotel. Yes. So soon after my secondary school, I joined Uganda Crafts. I was employed as a young man who would be carrying boxes and stuff, but a trainee kind of thing. And I was very keen because I could see that there was art. I was coming from a secondary school where art was not so fascinating, that here I was witnessing Karamojong shields, witnessing costumes from Gulu, shields from Buganda that were woven, beautiful things from Evianzi, from Ankole, and so I was part of this crafts thing that became a big export market for Uganda Ministry of Culture. So they groomed me, really. I was groomed to.
Now, do you say that you in the teachers in your second school, art teachers?
Yes.
In as much as it was an Asian school,
yes.
Did it represent other secondary schools? Would you say that Chito would have taught in the same way, or Namibia would have taught the same way? Or
they were following a syllabus, a Ugandan syllabus at the time, set by the British, and that syllabus would be teaching the same way. Except that here I was in my own country, and I was the only African in the art class, and that was a bit weird with that way of teaching, whereby I was the children. These were children of traders, Indian traders. They had money. They bought them all the equipment and stuff. Canvas was something that I had never seen, and here it was. So when I grew up in Namtamba, where backcloth was being made, so and I could relate canvas to backcloth, so I picked backcloth as my canvas. So I became sort of resisted this other foreign form of, and I'm still so because.
That your exposure to that approach that you disliked was in itself useful and significant and important in encouraging you to look deeper into your background and your history.
You're quite right.
Yeah.
Things that we rebel against, a lot of times will propel you to something even more interesting.
Yeah.
And that's what happened, as you put it rightly. Yeah. I felt that I'm an artist, number one. I want to do art, but there's another way of doing art. Although I do combine painting as well, but I combine the two of them because I think as a modern man in Africa and in Uganda, where you have Makerere, where you have Chambogo and Kitovu and all these other places which has produced amazing artists, I do respect their work. Incredible achievement. I mean, because once you learn a technique, whatever technique it is, it's then you to propel your ideas and things using that technique.
So you went to work as an intern of some sort?
Yes, yeah.
And thereafter?
Oh yes, I was a good worker because I think Apollo Hotel opened, which was yes, in 1960s. They were building it in 67. They were starting to build, and that was when I was working in the Uganda crafts after my O-level. Then they looked for tourists were beginning to come, and they were staying in the hotel before it was finished. So Uganda Craft said, the Ministry of Culture said, well look, we want somebody to come and sell crafts at this hotel. The shops are not open. Everything is, that person should be on the veranda somewhere outside, like a kiosk. There was not even a kiosk. So nobody wanted to go sitting outside. So I was chosen to go and sit outside. So they made me, I didn't refuse. I took boxes and I put them in the store. I was given every morning, I would lay down the mats, I would put some tables and sell crafts on the side of the, and deliver them to the ministry and deliver the money to the ministry.
And is that these crafts, first of all, the word crafts is problematic for me.
Yeah.
Because the divide between art and craft is
quite.
Secondly, these crafts that you sold, so you were an agent of. Who made them? Maybe that's the question. Where did they come from?
They were made in the villages. And one way that the minister wanted his intention was to revive the skills in the villages, to find markets for these products. And these, as you say, they were art. East Africa has art, but it's a very decorative art, very much tangible, art that we use, art that we live with, art that is evident in our bedrooms, in our sitting rooms, in our food preparations. So it is very much an art form that is utilitarian and so on. And so I was selling items from all over Uganda, and I had a chance of visiting these centers to buy, because I was taken by the ministry buyers in a van, and I was there to help them load up what they were buying and so on. And I could see the makers, I could meet the makers, so I had an opportunity of seeing where these things came from.
So these art crafts run prior to the modern formal, graduate artworks.
Yeah.
You have crafts on one side, and had paintings of Norbert Kagwa and others.
Yes, on the other side, yes.
So, these two actually never met?
I could see the normal gallery when it was opened, that Makerere artists dominating a lot in these exhibitions that were held. But I mean, people like Lumu and people like, they were showing, and Teresa Musoke was a young, she had gone to Nairobi, and the only thing I remember that was recognized, or sort of, I could say that emerged the modern way of teaching and the tradition, where the Okot Bitek, there was a gentleman called Okot Bitek. Okot Bitek is a writer, but he was the head of the National Theatre at one time. And he created a festival. And this festival was bringing all forms of art form, and particularly music. And he had a festival. This festival represented all artists in Uganda. And that's when I first saw the merger of art forms with this country, both schooled and in schools, and those schooled in the villages.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you didn't last very long in selling crafts?
No, I was given an opportunity by the ministry to be the manager of the finished shop in Apollo Hotel. When the hotel was ready, I moved in as a manager. Immediately elevated at the age of probably 19, 18.
So you left school? At least
I left at O level.
Yes.
Yeah, I left school at O level.
Yeah.
And then I started to do a bit of my own, sort of buying shells from Shauriako.
Yeah.
It was, that time it was still called Shauriako. And I would string shells, sell them to the Uganda crafts, make a bit of money while I was within the ministry. And when I was given this opportunity to manage this shop, I did very well. The ministry made a profit of 1.5 million shillings at that time. In 1 year that I was there. So it was a plus for me. So 1970 came an exhibition, the Expo 70 in Japan.
Yes.
Uganda had money to build a pavilion. And they hired a British designer, architect. And they produced a very beautiful sort of a cross between African architecture and European. So this pavilion housed coffee marketing board, lint marketing board, tourism, and Uganda crafts. And then who goes to Japan? I go to Japan with Uganda crafts.
Now, that then means, in their view, they already were suspicious of the paintings and sculptures as being African enough to represent, for Uganda to be present
in their art forms at that time were looked at. It was still that period where the nation wanted an identity, and they were looking for identity in the village artworks, in the making of the community, in the music, and so the artists that came to Japan were commissioned to produce, let's say, sculpture for outside. let's say, a piece of artwork for the in the office of the ambassador. But otherwise, everything was. There was a music playing and videos playing of musicians.
Okay.
There was a wonderful Ugandan musician who came, Evalisto Muyinda. If you probably don't know him. He was an old man who, at that time, he was very vibrant and traditionalist musician. Evalisto Muyinda, amazing. Nesempeke was one of his young apprentice. So and I liked Muyinda very much because we used to chat, and he would talk about art, and I would enjoy listening to him.
Okay.
So we were there for 8 months.
Yeah. Ooh.
And after in Japan.
Hey.
Very well paid according to the foreign, you know. So after that, I resigned from the ministry, and I decided I am going to start my own crafts and art business. So my family members, some of the members, moved to Mombasa, and I went and I opened a little gallery called Sanaa Studio.
From your name?
From my name.
But Sanaa means something more.
Sanaa, well, at that time, I was not going by the name of Sanaa. I was going by the name of Noel Gateja.
Okay.
Because I was born on Christmas.
Oh.
You see,
Why
so
not
people
Emmanuel?
I don't know why. Emmanuel. I have a brother called Emmanuel.
Yes.
But I was called Noel. Because
of the
25th.
I know Noel is, a name given to girls. Noel.
Oh, Noelina, Noella. But the Noel is also a male name.
It's usually used for people born on Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I arrived in Mombasa and I found a place in the old port. Have you been to Mombasa?
Yeah, I mean
the Fort Jesus is on one side, the old part of Mombasa, the original town, and then you have the old port where the dhows come and go. That's where I found a shop, a little place, very small, and I started off with Uganda Crafts supplying me, and then I.
Your competitive in Kenya is well known for its high class.
Where my neighbor was a carpet seller from carpets from Iran, from Persia, you know, that time, very expensive, Zanzibari chests. All kinds of amazing things, and here I was with my Ugandan crafts. So beginning, I started to mix Congolese art with my small shop. The masks. Yes. I started to travel. I went to Zanzibar, went to Lamu. Lamu became my center of attraction. And I traded a lot with the people in Lamu. Lamu is an island off the Kenyan coast. And it is still, it's a Swahili place. Swahili means that the coastal people, they're all Swahilis, Muslim, as well as African, in the sense that the traditions are very old. Now, an old lady liked me buying her things. She was Swahili, Mama Shamu she was called. and she named me Sanaa.
Oh, okay.
And she had a son who was called Shavchina. Now, Shavchina was a very good friend of mine. And so that's how I become Sanaa.
It explains jewelry, right?
Yes, I would like to know that.
It is called a vignere. And it comes from jewelry.
That's
Uganda would not pronounce Chwara very well. Then the Indians say, okay, Vinyere.
In Kinyarwanda, Inyereri. That's interesting. Very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Language, how language becomes very...
Our languages are old.
Yeah.
And they very much meet at various points.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, so but Mombasa also was a phase.
Mombasa was an amazing phase because that's where I grew up. I grew up there, really. I
started. You had your first children there?
Yes, I was married down there.
Okay.
I had my 2 daughters down in Mombasa. I became a collector for the museum because while the museum in Lamu was opening, and they found me very much a buyer from the islands around, so they said, could you work for us sometimes? Whatever you buy, let's see what you collect. And so I was, in that way, related to the museum starting. Fort Jesus gave me a small room in the museum. But so I was very well established.
You're a merchant of art.
At that time in Mombasa, I was a merchant of art. And I moved from that to decorating hotels. In Malindi, I would do cafes. In South Coast, I would do lampshades.
Okay, and I was going to ask you, when do you begin to get hands-on?
I sold my business after...
It went bankrupt?
No. I sold it because I went into partnership into a restaurant with some Kenyan friends, and I realized that I was really an artist, not a businessman. So I decided to sell my interests and go and study art, studying interior design.
While residing in Kenya?
Oh yes, in Kenya.
Kenya was not hostile to Uganda at that time?
No, I left Kampala on the train to Kenya, and we were using the same currency. In 1971, 71, East African currency. I found many Ugandans there, living there. The students would come to Makerere, people would come for tours, Kenyans would come, Tanzanians would come, and stay here for a while and go back. So there was a very family kind of thing. So I didn't see any hostility at all.
It became a problem in this late 70s, I think.
After Amin, during Amin, it was very serious. But luckily for me, I was taken as a Mswahili. Many people thought I was a local Swahili. I didn't.
She's got parents?
I suppose, and also my friends. I was adopted by a Somali man.
And you spoke Swahili?
I speak Swahili. So it was home. I would go to the mosque to pray. I had no problems.
Why did you go to the mosque to pray?
Because my friends would come on. Let's go to the mosque. And I would go to the mosque. When there's a fasting, it would be funny if I didn't fast when all my friends were fasting. So some of them would come to my house to see if I had some food. It's those who didn't want to fast.
But you didn't have Arabic prayers on your...
A big prayer?
Arabic writing, or Kufik or something.
Oh, those, I would probably have those to sell. I didn't have, no, I didn't become a Muslim as such. I was just a godly person.
They cared to go ahead and check you that are you really a Muslim?
No. If they wanted to check and see if I was really a Muslim, I didn't give them the opportunity. No, that one I didn't. Yeah, it was very nice. Even today, when I go to Mombasa, or Lamu especially, yeah, I have my hat. I have my kiko.
Wow.
Yeah, I just fit in. Yeah. Bushti, I have a bushti. You know, a busuti. A bushti is from busuti.
A niece, nephew actually, who actually was adopted. You know, grew up with his singer and the Chanjo, no Chanjo.
Chanjo, yes.
Chanjo sort of took him up and
yes.
And so he's a son of my brother.
Okay.
But my brother was not, you know, didn't have enough money to educate him and so on. So went to became Chanjo's family.
Okay.
And so could not allow him to be in his house without converting.
Converting, I see.
So indeed he converted.
Okay.
And he liked it very much. And now it's like he's such a big advocate of Islam.
Yeah. No, I didn't go so much into the religion as such. I went into the respect of my community.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
for convenience.
For convenience, yes, I suppose. And they also didn't preach to me so much.
Okay.
I had some friends of mine, older men, who used to sell crafts to me, and they would come and say, "Why don't we find you a wife, a Muslim wife, who would teach you all the, you know?" And I would say, "Well, look, you know, I am now." I'm not ready, you know, and because I was living a very modern life in Mombasa. I had friends from all over the place, and the refugees from Rwanda used to come to my house. I had English friends. I had people, because of the shop that was selling to Europeans mainly. Many would be associated with me. Kenyan community of Europeans is there. So I have a wider circle than the local Mombasa circle. And hence my wish to go to the interior design, because I was advised by a tourist who found me designing and making a cafe in Malindi. He says, could you share your sketches with me? He was an architect. I said, I don't sketch. He said, well, how come you're building this? How do you do it? I said, I wake up in the morning, go to the beach, think, come, and do the thing. He says, go to school. He said, he gave me, when he left the hotel, he left me a sketchbook and a pencil, and I took it seriously. I enrolled in a school in the UK, correspondence.
Which school is that?
Roddick International School. No, it's in Brighton. Okay. It's in Brighton on the coast, yeah. So I did that. So I was able to read about old masters. I was able to read about art history. I was really enthusiastic about it, because these are things that related to my work, my life. So then that's how I sort of ended up actually going to Italy, to a proper university.
Was like a foundation year?
I did.
It
was preparing me to become an interior designer. And every course you did was a test. In correspondence, they give you papers to do, and each paper is a test.
Right.
So you research and you do it and you pass. You fail, you do it again. But I was able to do it. At the end of it, I didn't finish because I enrolled in this university in Italy, hoping I would go for interior design. So I took my portfolio and everything, in Florence, and I was paying for myself, and I sold my business. You see, it was a very good business at that time. It had become bigger, and I was able to sell. And of course, I had a wife and children at that time. So, very early age.
Yeah.
24, I couldn't wait.
Wow.
Yeah. From New Zealand. Yeah. Anyway, this university was interesting because they said, well, look, according to your portfolio, you're better suited in jewelry design or art classes. You're really not, and you can't be employed to design telephones for the European market because your background is really looking like you were living in hotels. Pensione, the money was running out completely. So they had gone, and I realized I had a year of jewelry making. So I applied to go to college in London to finalize my City and Guild certificate. So I did. I went to London, and I was able to reunite the children.
Yeah, you carried credits from Italy?
To London, yeah. I carried my papers. But fun enough, my whole drive was to become independent, because I was, or Nora is a person who created. I wanted a studio of my own and make jewelry and design, and I was thinking of the Egyptian jewelry. I was thinking of all kinds of things. So in London, I was able to go to night classes and work in the day for a jeweler to make money. I would work in the repairing jewelry, making wedding rings, making earrings, and gold, silver, and so on. And in the evening, I would go to classes, and then I fell on an idea. In Europe and England, there's a lot of paper coming through the door, advertising fridges or the council papers, because we were in the council house. The newspapers, so much paper in the morning you pick up, and then the toilet roll. The children were, in our house. The inside of a toilet roll, that hard roll. Yes. I like that because being a jeweler, it has a shape. It's a pipe. It's a little. So I started to create art in my spare time at home. I cut that roll and flatten it or cut it into pieces, join it, put it on a board, cut up some papers, put it in, and create some pieces of artwork, small. Then I opened it up, this toilet roll, and I found it was a triangle. A triangle.
Yes.
It is an obtuse triangle. One side is, so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. When you unravel it,
yes.
it becomes a triangle. So I rolled it tightly, re-rolled part of it tightly, and I got a bead that was tall on one side and flat on the other. So that's how the beads started. Then I showed it to my tutor, because I painted it and I took, and then she says, these are paper beads. Then she says, there was a time we did some paper beads here. So we looked in the big box of rubbish It was me looking for it. I used to like to go there where students used to throw things, and old student past school, you know. And then I found a bead, and I took it to her, and she said, yes, this is a pepper bead. So I said, oh, great. I took it home, put it in the water, unraveled it, and I found that collateral triumph. Then I made beads in my house, and I cast them in gold, and I cast them in silver.
Okay, I see.
You can cast them, of course, you know that.
Yeah.
And
so you have the skill of casting.
Yes.
Okay.
So not so much, because in jewelry trade, you can have many skilled people. There are casters, there are platers, so you don't have to do it yourself. I had done it at college, but these were skilled people. A centrifugal system it is whereby you inject your molten metal into forms and they burn up. So I would get these pieces of jewelry, make them up, sell them at weekends in markets and make money. A little money, but it was my design. So that's how the paper beads came into gold and silver.
Now, would you say you are a pioneer there? Or?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Because nobody knew had these paper beads. Nobody was making them. And they were in gold and silver.
Yeah.
So I took part in an exhibition called the New Horizon.
Okay.
New Horizon was the black art movement in London at that time I was there. This black art movement was amazing. It had people like Sokari, Douglas Camp. It had Lobaina Hamid.
That's 1980 something?
Yeah, 85, 86. The exhibition was 1985. I have a catalogue. Keith Piper, and some of the big names in the black art movements that today, from that period. And they were my contemporaries. We were showing together in this. So I showed not paper beads, but gold and silver and brass and jewelry. I showed jewelry, but I used to make big brass things, because in Zanzibar, I learned how to in Mombasa, to decorate them, So I relied a lot on my past because I want to be original. That's how. Then, of course, I decided I must go home. My marriage was on the rocks, so to speak. And it's a pity, but that's life. And nicely so. We're still very good friends. And the children, one of them is here. The other one comes and goes.
Okay.
So I came back because I had a small gallery called Safari Studios in London. For a year.
Oh.
Safari Studios was in the old part of London. And it was selling African artists' work, paintings, sculptures, and jewelry. The reason I called it Safari was because it was going to enable me to travel back home.
You always had a plan of returning?
Returning, absolutely. Because I knew art was here. I knew artists were here. Materials, amazing. There you couldn't find materials that were fascinating. Here you can find fibers, you can find bamboo, you can find... I did my dissertation, my final jewelry with the black bamboo and silver. And that was really good because you can imagine a piece of black bamboo and silver, the contrasts and the beauty, and very, very nice.
And this is the sit and guild something.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's how I came back in 1990. And
before none of these were born.
no, they're not born yet. Were you born?
That's when I was born.
You had made your contacts and
well, yes,
start you off and created a space and had
I wasn't so. I had a friend of mine, the curator of the New Horizon exhibition in London, called Joseph Olubo, Nigerian guy. And he was an artist, a wonderful printer. And we used to dream about going home to work with the communities and to work within the environment, African environment.
And this is also in part because of your childhood memories?
Yes, and of course the weather.
Yeah.
And also the fact that my neighbors, being English, were not very neighborly in the sense of, say, hello, good morning. They would wonder why I'm saying good morning. I mean, I'm just giving you that as a little example of actually what you found generally that you weren't accepted. So I didn't want to feel that. I want to be on top of my...
Actually, people who
I want to live normal.
In Europe, we think they are enjoying life there. They are not.
They're not. They're not.
You feel resented. You feel like, you know.
Because the racism is still alive. It is very, very much alive, and because of that, it was interesting when I opened my shop in London. I went to the council and I told them I want to be helped to get a room. And the guy looked at me and said, "You're a jeweler?" I said, "Yes. My wife does jewelry in the..." And he was very accommodating, and he managed to get me a space. And he liked the fact that I was doing African jewelry. So he was somebody who was interested in my creativity.
Now, talk about that African jewelry. What was it that you felt was that the idea of Africa was in there?
The African jewelry is always a form of spiritual expression. Talismans, for example. You wear your prayers. You can wear your ancestral piece of jewelry. You can wear your gift. Somebody, a lover, has given you a piece of ring. But not only that, that ring contains the love messages. In Ghana, a goldsmith will make jewelry if he wants to marry her. If he wants to marry her, he'll bring gold. This is in the olden days. He'll bring some gold dust to me as a jeweler, and I will take the gold, melt it, and ask him to put a message in the gold before it cools. So while it is molted and it's a sort of liquid, the words are spoken into this gold, and immediately the fire is taken off, and the gold takes in all this information. So the African jewelry is like that. It is like the ancient European, the dark.
You would to be able to recognize that as African.
Because then the shaping of becomes more engaging, more artistic, because you're not doing it as a fashion. You're doing it as an individual piece that you're creating with a message.
Wow, okay. So you came back to Uganda
and wanted to do, I got a license to become a jeweler. I found no gold.
Yeah, that's it.
I had a license to buy gold, but there was nobody to buy from, except illicit gold.
Nonetheless, you would come back to Uganda not to do jewelry in gold because the market had changed and everything else.
I had an idea that I would probably, the rich would want the wedding rings, and I found a lady, a bank manager in Kabale. She commissioned me to do a brooch and earrings, but I got some gold from Karamoja at that time. Some guys selling, and they brought it to me, and I had a studio in Kilembe mines.
Why Kilembe?
Because people in Namtamba had run away during the war. My parents, the Obote too.
Yes.
Because of the Museveni fighting in Luwero, and Namtamba and Bujuko and all that area, people had run, especially if you were suspected to be linked with the Museveni's group or the PDF, and so my mother had died. Many had run to Kenya. My mother died in Kenya, but I was in Europe at that time, so I didn't bury her. And many parents actually found their children in different places. So my sister, who was in Jinja, was a run from Jinja because the UPC was very strong on anti-Western people. So she got a job in Kilembe, and her husband had died. She got a job in Kilembe mines and settled in the Kilembe quarters. So I didn't know where to go. So I just came to Kilembe to join her.
Okay.
And the company gave me a room I rented, and I started a studio. But while I was starting a studio, there was a guy killing a butcher, throwing cow horns on the pile behind my studio. So I started to carve cow horn.
Okay.
And then I met a Bakonjo family, a family of artists. Some of them were even in Zambia selling art. These were amazing carvers. So I managed to get 2 young guys, and we worked together. I was paying them. We carved bangles, we decorated them, and I was having a group of young women rolling beads, and you know,
the memories of beads.
Beads came back because I could see gold was not there. So we made paper beads, and I found magazines on the streets of Kampala, Chinese magazines. Nobody could read them, but they were colorful. So I made beads out of them.
Those magazines actually ended up here in such a profusion, because I could remember them in the village where I come from. People
were picking them on the wall. Yes, that's right. And I found the dealer.
And I think it's also because Obote too had strong connections with China. They would make him cheap. Is it India or China? UPC clothes, people.
Oh, I see. I have no idea, but I really found the importer. The guy, the middleman, he had boxes and boxes. So I was beginning to buy boxes. And I had a first exhibition in National Theatre, 1991. And then with my connections, I would go to Europe every year, to Munich, to different Berlin with the jewelry. And sell.
And paper jewelry?
Paper jewelry, just paper jewelry. And bangles from cow horn. Unfortunately, the butcher saw what I was doing.
And decided to the press?
No, he decided to burn the horns. Whenever he would take the horns from cows.
Yeah.
They would light them up. So I said, well, look, let me buy them.
Yeah.
He refused.
Hey.
Oh my God.
One night, you know. Yeah.
Because it would be benefiting you, be benefiting also. I mean, both of you.
But he was not happy. Yeah, very bad.
Yeah.
I've met such people before.
Yeah.
When you create something, it's like artists. An artist will create something out of nothing, like your work. Out of nothing, you make something humongous.
Yeah.
Humongous. Not everybody will enjoy that.
Yeah. You mean the glory of success?
The glory of success.
Yeah.
I mean, her work can really be amazing.
Yeah.
But there'll be people willing to come and punch holes in it.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. It's like when you read old masters.
Yeah.
Somewhere going to be in prison for being pornographic.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Celebrating.
Celebrating, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
there was this, of course, you remember the normal gallery had nude exhibitions for 2-3 years until the attendants came and
and closed
decided to make noise about it, and I think that's where it ended. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, you continue to make jewelry, but
continue to make jewelry,
sort of,
and bark cloth, of course, came into play. I was beginning to paint on bark cloth in the night. Had my first exhibition with Fabian Mpaji as the gallery, Normal Gallery, 1992.
Mukasa as well, I think.
The Mukasa was. So my show was opened by Major General Tumwine at that time, and so that's when I started to establish myself as an artist in this country. Yeah. Although in London I had a show called Homecoming in 1986 at the Africa Centre.
Oh, I know that.
When Seven came to talk to Africans in the diaspora. After independence, actually, after the Obote went, 86, after takeover. So when I did that, Homecoming was really for me to go home. And him to come home, you know.
So your homecoming is two reasons. One is because you really wanted to go home.
I wanted to go home to a peaceful home.
It was that also your marriage had sort of...
The marriage, not so much, because we did have an agreement.
Okay.
And the children were, I brought the children with me.
Oh.
And they would go back and forth.
Yeah.
So we had an arrangement.
How old were they?
The arrangement?
The children were
they were 5 and 7.
Yeah.
They were toddlers. By the time I came, they were 7. I mean, when I left Kenya, one was 4 and the other one was 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny walking in the streets of Florence and the child wants to have a pee and you don't know where to, you don't speak the language. You know, you have to find somewhere to have. So, you know, we went through all that. And so we had...
So when do these women come on board? You know, you begin to go bigger.
Kilembe,
okay.
Kilembe, I had women making those paper beads, but I also had the refugees from Rwanda in Hima. Hima, from Kasese going to Fort Portal, there's a place called Hima Cement, where the cement company. Now behind the Hima Cement is the refugee camp, a big refugee camp. They've been there for many years. So when I visited them, I was looking for their basketry. If you have seen Evianzi with their covers, you know, those little covers, they call them miheha. So those miheha are little covers, Now, I asked the ladies to make them flat. To carve them flat so I can get big earrings, big, you know, and they did. And I started to sell them to New York. Yeah, to a customer in New York.
You're obviously a business, an entrepreneur of some sort.
Of course, because the survival instinct is very much within me. That, I mean, within everybody in a way. But I believe that my survival always came from within rather than from without. Because I couldn't be employed. I was not a mason. I was not an accountant. I was not. I was somebody who just puts things together, an artist. You know, how can I ask for a job? I mean, you know.
And now, of course, where we started, it was about African modernism. We started modernism. And we're trying to understand this language of African artists, trying to be true African, but also truly international at the same time. That you appeal to your local audience, yet Africa is not an island. It has absorbed influences from different parts of the world, and you create something which is about you and your surroundings and your environment in Africa, but can also be part of the international art circuit, for example.
Yes, it's the exposure. In Africa, we are very much exposed. Although,
in relation to your work,
the exposure I had was that I was exposed to the coast of Kenya, for example. I was exposed to Tanzania. I was exposed to Japan, and so, but I could not be but me here with the music. I was exposed to the Kampala music at the time. I mean, people like Okot Bitek, as I was telling you, the nightclubs were very vibrant, by the way. Oh yes. I haven't been to one lately, but I don't know, you could tell me. But they were, you know, we used to have dances in Kampala from 2 o'clock to 7 for the young ones, those who didn't go to nightclubs, where the sodas and so on. Those were days when people were interested in modern music. So modernity came to us with a positive. There were parties in Kampala where you'd go crash in as a young man, and you find Europeans, Indians and Africans in the 60s. People were beginning to, and ministers too, powerful people. And there you are looking, seeing your elders doing things. Like there was a time when it was fashionable in Kampala to hold parties, big parties. So you invite, so-and-so is having a party, right? And they paint the entire house blue. The room where you're going to dance, where you're going to, so they would paint it blue, you go there and you dance, next morning paint it back to normal. Yeah, I mean, you can see how people crazy, So we were exposed to that.
But how has your work changed or transformed over time? Starting with earrings and so on, going flat on canvas or backcloth, and then it's this small, and now it becomes bigger, and now it has figure motifs. And now next day it has things that are
I think it is the transformation. I think as I grow in age and also spiritually, as I discover myself, I find that my work, I merged paper to backcloth, not by accident, by intent, because I'm very conscious of the environment. I'm very conscious of the materials we use.
In terms of, let's save our environment, is that what you're saying?
Yes, okay. Save the environment. Okay. Respect our environment. Yeah. Respect Njulu, for example. The Njulu, the material that we make these beautiful wedding baskets, the normal baskets, has been abused, and you don't see very much Njulu anywhere. Sansa. Even in Sansa, for example. Raffia is going. So those are the materials which artists can use to rediscover our past skills and skills and usage and so forth, and creativity. And so my quest for saving the environment became so important that paper returns to backcloth, returns to the tree. Backcloth goes back as a preserver that it is always in Uganda, as an embalming, it embalms the dead. Yeah. So the wasted material that I pick up and make beads goes back to its original form, to home, so to speak. So it pleases me to see that, going back to what I was talking about, jewelry, the talisman, being a Muslim in sense of background of working with Muslims. I worked with jewelers in Mombasa who were making talismans, and you take a written piece of prayer and you put it into you encase it in a piece of silver, and you weld silver from outside. It doesn't burn, and you wear it as your prayer. And so my pieces are prayers. They are pieces of prayers that I make that they speak about things to do with our social life, injustices, especially the environment, and so it's a choice. It's an intended choice to sort of hopefully in future I will be doing exhibitions related to saving the environment.
Is this documented? Did you I know at some point in the end I'll ask you any news coverage or documentation about it?
I have archives down in that dungeon. That'll be another day. I have archives, but not fully well, because I have been a private person, really. I'm not out there so much.
I'm going to pull you out. But no doubt they are from within your environment.
Within my environment, Hey, akasonso ka sikategedde bulungi akasonso akajanja kateekamu akajanja because because you see, I always wish that we promote African independence of being and the beauty. We have so much to offer and so beautiful that we're not given a chance because of what we know very well. Our mindset from the colonial time still stops us from being who we are.
Right.
And so when I talk about going home, it may not be so much a home, but an African environment, but where I can meet my trees, my, like say, indigenous things, indigenous food, for example, I feel that we could save our lives better if we could eat the right food, use the right herbs, because we have them. We have things that we are not using. And if artists were to actually consciously go out to use things that they have around them, African artists can become amazing contributors to world.
In that vein, do you think that the guy that is representing you is looking at those issues when it is inviting you to be?
Yes, I think so. They are interested in the story.
Are they interested? Is it in a selfish way, or they are honest about what they're doing?
I don't know them. I have not actually met anybody from there. I have only met them on Zoom. I have met them on email. But from what we talk about, I see them as honest enough to be good for me.
Because in the past, I asked that question because in the past, you would galleries, especially in Kenya, look for those neo-traditional sort of those
like
artists, the Katarika ways. They deal with anecdotes.
Yes.
If you paint a beautiful landscape, you're not African enough. So go for
I had a show in Munich, and one German man came to me and says that there are no artists in Africa. I said, excuse me? He says, modern African artists are not there, except the past. I said, why do you say that? He says, because you are imitators of European artists. And I was so moved. I said to him, look at my work. Look at my work. Do you have backcloth? Do you work like that? So, I mean, there's a lot of movement against our awakening. I look at African art as a renaissance. It is, we are right at the forefront of a renaissance. Yeah.
But you agree that indeed, first there are so many types of art, obviously, in this world, everywhere. But the gatekeepers of our art, in terms of being successful, are still those people in the West.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
And they have certain things they desire.
Yes.
That they call African enough to pass the date. I wonder whether you have a word to say about something like that.
I think the African artist has to challenge that mindset of the foreign mindset that wants to stifle our successes by being quite strong and new and resolve that they cannot but agree to you're going through the gate.
Our local centers, which I call international in their way.
Yes, I see, yes.
It doesn't have to be right Paris or London or New York.
Yes. Oh, quite,
you can be in Kampala or Kalis and be international in that space.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
In a way. Maybe we need to make that art that first and foremost appeals to our
own first.
Within our environment and to accept ourselves as artists with merit in our own space.
Space, yes. You're very right, because I think Subi's art is doing a lot of that. My art is quietly doing that through the communities that I work with. I'm working with about 50 women at the moment, but they are in the villages, and the others are not near here. But an idea of exposing ourselves in Kampala, one idea I had was to walk from the museum through Kampala Street all the way to the Lugogo, that place where we have our showground, Uma showground. If you had a festival and you had artists coming and walking through Kampala one weekend, maybe a Sunday, whereby the traffic is not so bad, and we would have, say, floats, big trailers of people performing on these motorcade trailers, but going slowly. And then, of course, you have amazing dresses, amazing things, and art and paintings. You know, imagine you walking down the road and two people holding your art piece. You don't have to hold it. They will hold it. You are the king. You know, I mean, that kind of thing. It would move people in Kampala. It would create an understanding that this is a group of people who actually uphold culture.
Did you think Pillar 2012 was maybe beginning to do something?
Art.
Where you participated?
Yes. Yeah, I participated. It was beginning to do it, and it was really almost should have continued to do it. It should be an event that happens every year.
Oh, the prime mover of that one. Jen from CC, I think he was.
Yes.
Not, So Subi, have we?
Yeah, I wanted to focus in a bit more on the work specifically, because you do not your forms, like the forms in your work, are not realistic.
No.
And in a way, it can almost what phase did modernism come after? It's like, in terms of influence of the different art periods, and the intentional, is it something that you're very intentional about to not make very realistic forms, right, in your work? Almost like suggest ways, and in a way maybe it also, when you're speaking, maybe ties into the trying to not box people in, maybe, I imagine, I'm trying to think through that you used to see all these paintings of people and they're bringing you, birds and nature and the sunset. So when you then choose to make work, and the fact that now your work went into 2D, you're really coming as a jeweler, but also as an enthusiast, an entrepreneur who has seen what's on the market, that you then, in almost like revolt, say, I'm going to just antagonize all that. Just switch up the painting with actual material. I'm going to paint with actual material. As if a revolution, a very interesting revolution. And how, because I know also for modernism, there's a conversation around how it is that you have all these different artists that have been influenced in a way with, these different artists or movements that they've seen.
Yes.
I wonder if you could speak a bit into that, and also the relation between, just from that bridge between that and the work you're making now. And it will sort of circle back to that question Dr. Chaine asked, that do you see certain changes in your practice now, even in relation to now, contemporary art now? Maybe even tying in what are some of the comments you hear about your work, because there's how you see it, but there's the conversation. Does it fit into narratives of this is African? Or is it, man, I really like how you're challenging how I thought, I'm not seeing a sunset, but I am seeing a sunset. But maybe I'm seeing it with a whole new, I didn't know. And I think one of the strengths with that is how the thing you've said, I think that sort of your work and mine connect on, is the material and the fact that you're not starting from buy paint from Dubai. You're starting from, I have blue magazines, red magazines, yellow magazines, so we can rethink color palettes.
Yes.
And what am I seeing daily, but also what you hinted on I get the women and tell them, try, do what you want. Let's
Yes.
see, teach me.
Yes, exactly.
I'm like,
And actually, they have a voice in your work.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, exactly. I mean,
Yeah, if you could just like comment on that.
It's an interesting question because, as I was saying, materials have a source, and materials have an origin. Let's say the canvas was very, it's a material that I found dead and I had to resurrect or make it alive by painting on it. Whereas backcloth, in a day like this, sometimes I want to lay out my piece of backcloth in the studio with the light, because I approach a painting or a work that I'm going to do without knowing exactly what I'm going to do.
yes.
So, but the backcloth will tell me what I will do.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, I'll take a walk around here and I'll come back with an answer. Or I'll go away to Zimbabwe. I have a farm there. I'll go there, walk around. All those pieces of wood you find outside my studio, they're from Zimbabwe. Pick up something. So, and I always say that things look for me.
Yeah.
You're thinking of something, you have a passion, you want to do something, and you don't know where to start. And then you find it, amazing. And that to me is always happening. For example, you have to be absolutely observant every moment you walk out. Because in my language we have a word, baringa. Chibonom, no, it's not chibonom. In Uganda, I don't know what you call it, but when you see a cloud and you immediately see a family of people, the clouds form art pieces. The trees form, shadows form, leaves form, flowers begin to be alive. And then as you are looking immediately, a bird comes and falls on it. So you are happening right in front of you. So I always believe that the materials I work with tell me a lot more of what I should do with them. And also what I've seen or what I've talked about with somebody, like you're coming here, has a meaning that I don't know about yet. And it will manifest, inshallah, because it will come. It will come, that it is the materials talking to me in order to do the work I will do. Yeah.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So we were speaking to one of the people that's contributing to Tanzania, the doctor, what's his
Elias Jengo.
Dominicus.
Dominicus, yeah.
Dominicus. And he was talking about the things that have affected modernism in African, East African art. And he said one of the key things that haven't really been tackled is faith.
Yes.
So when you're speaking, I hear you say Shala, then at points you say then God, then at other times, and then when I look at your work, there is like a fluidity, it's just not boxed in, like it could go, even the wearable wax can
Yeah.
I don't know if you see these things, but I wonder, is this like a key thing for you, and do you have certain things that you think related to your faith? Like you said you're a spiritual person.
Yes.
So I guess one of the things is you're alert to just be present in moments and just see what something's saying to you.
Yes.
You even mentioned, that the sunlight is almost like a form of media for you.
Yes.
It could tell you how to deal with a work.
Yeah.
So I wonder, could you speak a bit about that? Like in if we're looking at your work in this context, how has faith, you talked about your friends, right? You talked about the fact that you can really morph and become. I know, like for me in my practice, I remember when I was doing my master's and I was doing it at the landing site in Gaba, I would have to change. Like if I'm going, I had to look like the fishermen. Otherwise, they will not talk to. They can really tell if you're not part of them.
Yeah.
So I had to really change myself so that they can want to even have a conversation.
Yes.
Otherwise, they're so used for people. You know, the name Gaba means to take, right?
Yes,
or
yes,
to give.
Yeah.
So they're always used to, people always come to take from them.
Yes.
And the irony of the space is that it's so beaten down because of that.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
I don't know. So I wonder if you feel that there are particular ways that just intentionally faith has sort of played into your own personal practice. Like, are there times when you feel you are mimicking certain things because of like that time you're just around Muslims? So in a way, these were things you took on as.
Yeah.
I think before even you answer that, in addition, of course, it's because sometimes when you say faith,
yes,
faith can be, I have faith in what I'm doing, in the painting I'm making, because I know this painting is going to have life and it's going to impact, transform. But then there's faith that is external to us, that is imposed from outside sometimes.
Yes.
Christianity is one of them, Islam is one of them. And those can be constraints.
Yes,
in some way.
You
feel that, okay,
to break
I remember when they were burying Kataluwa, I say, we are not praying for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
He had him as at home.
Yes,
and then you could say, okay, my ancestors are important and relevant.
Yes.
And I value them.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean that I'm not a Catholic, but you know, there's the divide between those two.
Yes.
Seems to be so vivid, and yet there should be some kind of crossover. So the constraints then come, in, and the contradictions come in. And in the end, when you're making your work, they sort of could filter into that space.
It's a very interesting question because it deals with a lot of. In my case, things in my childhood, right when I was very small, I reflect on them, and I find my journey was somehow already written. And so is everyone. Everyone's journey is actually planned. The way my journey is, I dreamt one time, I was a child, I dreamt of a stage, and there was a light on the stage, and there were sort of activity on the stage. I don't remember human beings, but there was a need to observe this stage and what was going on the stage. I think it was when my parents were going to travel from where we were in Rwanda to Namtamba, and I was anxious as a child to go to this wonderful place. So that's one. Another one, as I was saying in my Mombasa associations and so forth, people I met, this young man, Shavchina, I told you about, he was recruited to go on a canoe, on a boat, a dhow, by an American man who had money. He hired young men from Mombasa, and he wanted them to be a crew on a dhow that was going to do the journey that they did many years ago. There are some Swahilis who went to New York before it was New York. And they went on a dhow and arrived there and actually came back. And so he wanted to write this piece of history, and he wanted these young men to come. So they did. So I used to sit with this Shavchina very much and talk. He would tell me stories, really. And actually, Swahili, I think he told me a lot of Swahili. So they left, but they went up the Suez Canal. They wanted to go. They passed Somalia. They had problems with water. They had to trade on a certain island with water. And then they went, drinking water. And then they went to the Suez Canal. And then when they got to Egypt, and we were going to cross the Mediterranean, the war broke out. Israel and Egypt. There was
67.
60 yes. The bombing of. So when it happened, they couldn't go. They were stranded. This man ran out of money. The crew found jobs. They dispersed. And Chef China loved to go back to Mombasa because he said to them, "Find your way." So he walked through the desert, finding ways of getting lifts, and on the river he came and eventually ended up in Mombasa after probably 8 months. But his story was so interesting. I relived that story. My story of leaving Africa, going to Europe, was very, very eventful. And I don't go through that now. However, I was looking for, I knew I would survive. I wasn't going to die because there was a purpose. And one of those purposes is to achieve the dream I had of the stage. And you know, the spiritual aspect comes into play. Because I was handled very well by Muslims in Mombasa, Florence, and I used to go to a Catholic church. Not because of wishing to pray, but meeting people and look at the frescoes. These amazing artworks on the the Renaissance time in Florence and you know, all those famous you know, Michelangelo and so on. And funny enough, after the prayers, a family would come and say, "Would you like to join us for a picnic?" I say, "Yes." We'll go to the mountain. They're speaking Italian. I did a bit of Italian. We would speak and eat bread and wine and what. Then they drop me back into town. I'd go to where, you know, I had a very good communal thing. I go to London and I meet the Black Art movement. I leave London, I come back here, and I'm in the villages, the women. I'm working with women. I'm very, very much interested in women's plight and the way families and the way they're keepers of our heritage, the women. And so in order to tell my story, there's a lot of spiritual guidance. And the spiritual guidance is from within, not so much from without. I'm going to Protestant churches, but I don't particularly, I take a sketchbook, always. And while I'm in church, I'm sketching, I'm away somewhere. A word will drop in my... a word will drop in my ears, or I'm looking at the pulpit, and then somebody will speak something or dressed somehow, or there are some interesting people. So, you know, the church can give me that peace. When I can sit for hours, okay, stand up, sing, sit down, you know, but
Wow. I'm very interested in that, and how that plays out with backcloth. Like,
I'm planning to cover a Bible with backcloth and move in the church. That is ultimately, or dress up into a piece of backcloth.
Like a quiet revolutionary.
I have to, everybody has to be, because in a way, we have to teach people how to get back into themselves, because people have left their souls.
You need to meet Fred Mutebi and see. You know, he makes the backcloth comes with a very hard one, right?
I know, yeah.
You want to cover, or you just want to make a cover, or like and literally as if print on the word holy.
No, yes, exactly. I mean, I want the backcloth to be respected and cherished. And what the church teaches, I did research on Mackay, and I did a residence in Scotland on Mackay, and the church tried to push backcloth out of use. In fact, when Muganzi Rasa passed on, King Mutesa first asked Mackay. Oh no, Mackay came to the king and said, I want to, please don't, this is too much backcloth. They wanted to wrap her in backcloth. We can make a box. The king says, why do you? He says, you know, all this backcloth and it's too much, but a box is good because it will keep the body. The king said, well, look, the backcloth is good because it preserves the body. So the king says, okay, make me a box. So he made a metal box, but the king demanded a metal box.
Okay.
Make me a metal box. So he went, welded, he brought it. He says, okay, go and make me another box that this one will fit in. So there are 2 boxes. He was very annoyed, but he had to go and do it. He made 2 boxes. So the king says, okay, because of tradition, but we put him in those boxes, which they did, and buried her. But from that time, the church was beginning to bring boxes. Mackay had an office in Natete, and the beginning of church.
Wow.
And anyway, I think I've talked too much, my God.